feel like God protected me from destroying my family, basically.
I'm Tim Anderson, and this is the place to learn about how to be a father and a friend to your family. Today I'm with Connor, and he has one new young baby and a beautiful wife. And we're going to talk about some of the things that he's dealing with in his family and some of the ways that he's pursuing being intentional with his family now and into the future. I hope you enjoy. So you just became a father recently. How old's your baby now?
4 months and I guess maybe 4.5 months.
Okay. 4.5 months.
September 15th. Oh, that's his birthday.
Well, that's awesome. That's exciting. September 15th. So tell me a little bit about your upbringing. What was your father like?
My dad is awesome. So his method of rearing and instruction is very lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time, he's always been kind of a man of few words, very stoic in that way. So that's something he's been trying to be more like out there with what he's thinking. Yeah.
Okay.
Because for me, as the first kid and as being so similar to him, it worked for me. I just looked at him and I was like, I want to do what he's doing. But for some of my younger brothers, I have 3 younger brothers, and we're all so different and we each need different things. So,
Do you have any sisters?
no sisters, so all boys, 4 boys. Yeah, and there's a almost 8-year gap between me and the next one.
Wow.
So I was an only kid for pretty much
First
up
8 years,
until my dad joined the Air Force.
Wow.
And then we moved around a lot, and brothers came, successively, various places. So yeah, it was a lot of. I was very strict when I was little. My aunt has told me that I think I was like 2 or something, and I was responding to my dad said yes or yeah or something, and it was a corrective like yes sir. And then late, kind of the typical birth order situation with the 4th one, it's just like whatever.
Like, yo, what's up, Dad?
Yeah, I'm like, what, are you kidding me? Like, I kidding. Well, but yeah, it was a respect and how to respond correctly was very important when I was young. And then my next brother right after me was so strong-willed, and basically nothing that worked with me worked with him, and so they had to completely
Figure something else out.
reassess. Yeah, so
your dad he joined the Air Force when you were 8.
yes,
Was he a military person before that? Military personnel or
no? But his dad was.
Okay.
His dad was a nurse in the Air Force,
Okay.
and my dad told himself he would never be a nurse, never join the Air Force, and that he did.
So there's Air Force.
Yeah. No, he's had several kind of miniature careers, and then the only career I remember is him being a nurse. So he was already an RN, and then he joined the Air Force to get his CRNA,
Gotcha.
Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist, which is you get your master's. The Army runs the program, but it's kind of a joint forces deal. So we spent, I guess, the next 2-ish years doing that.
Gotcha. So that means you must have traveled around a lot growing up.
Yeah, I think
Or at least
it was 3 or 4 years each station. So San Antonio, Northern California, and then Biloxi, Mississippi. That's where I graduated high school, and that was the last place I lived with them. I moved back to Denton actually for college. I'm from Tyler. Came to Denton for college, and they went to Germany.
So they went to a good place.
Yeah.
After you left.
And later I was like, oh, maybe I should have gone with them. Right. But then I wouldn't have met my wife. So obviously.
So you mentioned that you're like your dad in some ways.
Yeah.
So can you describe in what ways you're like your dad? What things have you sort of kept from your upbringing, and maybe a couple things that you've chosen to do differently.
So I'm very like him. I'm very slow to speak, and I don't mean that in a way of I'm so godly I'm slow to speak. It's like it'll drive my wife crazy because I've heard a joke, someone saying like when someone asks me a question, I feel the obligation to respond. My dad or whoever doesn't feel that obligation. I'm kind of in that boat, but I'm trying to be better. But yeah, if Julie asks me something, I don't know. I feel the sense that I'm just slow at formulating my thoughts. I have to really ruminate on it. But yeah, it just takes me a long time to respond. Typically, if it's something thoughtful, maybe you'll see that today. But
We're going to just silence for a few minutes.
Yeah. So that's definitely a big thing that he does, is kind of, if you stay silent long enough, the other person tends to continue saying things or asking more questions. Yeah. So you really get a more full question, I guess. No, I don't know. I think mannerisms, the amount and the way that I speak are very much like him. I think I'm more in touch with my feelings than my dad is. I get that from my mom. I'm a softie, and I've only started to see that my dad being in touch with his feelings, now that he's older, now that I'm almost 30. So yeah, something different. I think I've tried to speak my mind, even if it takes me longer. I try to not leave things unsaid. I want to make sure that my wife and I are on the same page, or that it's just, yeah, I don't want to hold things in, or bottle them up. And I think part of why my dad does that is being military, and he's actually deployed a lot. So he spent, I think he had 6 or 7, we'll say somewhere between 5 and 7 deployments over the course of my life, and always to conflict zones. The first one was actually to Germany. That one was pretty chill. It was like a vacation. But then it was Iraq, Afghanistan, Turkey, Africa, and each time the threat of danger was really close, and he saw difficult things, war trauma, working on saving the lives of enemies, was something that they did regularly. And you're being cursed out, and the patient is angry at you, but he's helping them. So, and any other kind of like war horrors you can imagine, he's seen some amount of that, and so he's been very good at compartmentalizing, and he does his best not to bring that home, which I'm sure every military person tries to do. So in that way, the stoicism, or his personality, really helped him to do that, I think. But on the negative side, my mom thought he was mad at her for like 10 years. But he wasn't. He's just quiet. So, I mean, they've only grown stronger. And I've seen that example and recognized I don't want my wife to think I'm mad at her.
Maybe let me do it faster.
Yeah.
Let it take 10 years or 20 years for me to figure it out.
Yeah, or try and be self-aware and recognize if I'm scowling or something, or just reassuring with words. I feel this weird resistance to, I feel like this doesn't need to be said, or why
it's not worth saying, maybe.
Yeah, or for some reason it's like an unnecessary effort, or like why, because being married your wife will ask things that you both know are true. Basically, just as simple as like, "Do you love me?" And it's like, how can you ask me that? But it's really not difficult to reassure and say, "Yes,
So you just say that,
yeah,
but that feels difficult.
right, yeah." It's just like, well, on principle, I'm like offended that you've asked, but it's like she needs to be reassured. So reassured. What's the
And
so what? That's your job.
so true.
Get better at that.
Yeah, that's good. So what would you say are 1 to 3 things that you do? Well, actually, before we get to that, you're a pilot.
Yes.
You fly for
PSA.
airlines, and that means you're away from home. So I'm assuming.
Yeah.
How often is that?
It's pretty sporadic being a junior pilot on the seniority list. I'm on reserve when I'm working. So even though, right, so there's basically reserve pilots and line pilots. If you have a line, quote unquote, then that means your schedule is laid out for the month. You know where you're going and how long the trips are. And then your off days are off. For me, I have a designated number of days on reserve or on call. And so, for example, I was on call yesterday or on reserve and starting at 5 a.m. So I wake up at 5 a.m., check my schedule. Okay, there's nothing. And then at 7-ish, I got a phone call from crew scheduling that said, "Hey, we have a trip for you." And it's just a turn. Go out to Tallahassee and come back. So, I guess I'm missing church today. That was how the warning went. Then I got ready, went to work, did the flight, came home. So it could be as unexpected as that, or it could be, "Hey, you're going to go sit at the airport on hot reserve, and if we need you, you'll be right there."
How's that been so far with having a new baby? You have a 4.5-month-old. That sort of unexpected being away. How have you navigated that?
It's definitely tough if I'm gone for multiple days. I, really start to miss him, and I feel bad that I'm not at home helping. But for better or worse, that's been his entire existence already. So Julie got pregnant last year. So the week that Cooper was born, I was on reserve sitting in Dallas, even though it's Philly based. And it was Saturday morning, and I had a trip assignment for that afternoon. And Julie and I walked to the mailbox, and she's waddling heavy, really in pain. She's like, "I think we might be going to the hospital today." And I was like, "Well, let's go right now." And then we got admitted, and then I called crew scheduling and said, "Hey, I can't work." And they said, "Okay." They marked me as sick, so I'm off that trip. Cooper was born the next day at 1 a.m. And then maybe it was 4 days later, I had to go back up to Philly.
Oh, wow.
So Cooper's a week old, and I got to leave. And it was kind of like that for, like I said, I was home all of October, so got to spend a lot of time with him. But he was born 3 weeks early. He basically slept all day long. So it was awesome, but he's not really interacting. And then November was probably the hardest because now he's starting to hit milestones, and I'm spending almost a week at a time in Philly.
So I suppose your dad traveled a lot when you were growing up.
Oh, really?
Would you say that had an impact on how you view what you're doing now?
100%. Yeah. So actually, when I first started flying, my goal was to fly for the Air Force. So I was going to join the Air National Guard and be a military pilot. And this was several years ago, before we were trying to have kids, before Julie was pregnant, obviously. Yeah. So
you're not taking your family.
Well, technically, I could. Julie could move with me to wherever we're going, Columbus, Mississippi, or Laughlin and where's Del Rio, or Enid, Oklahoma. So you're going to live there for a year.
Places.
Yeah, the best. You're going to live there for a year, and she's not going to know anybody. She's going to be alone most of the time.
Right. You've
She was not interested.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm trying not to make it like a super long story, but I had an office job. I was a graphic designer. That's what I went to college for. During COVID, I had the quarter life crisis, whatever. My father-in-law got me interested in flying.
It's probably good that you had a quarter life crisis rather than a midlife crisis.
Yeah, it's probably ideal to get it out of the way early.
That's right.
So I started applying to guard squadrons and rushing a couple in 2021, and that was also when I started flying. And then the civilian route was basically my backup and to make me more competitive for the military. But this whole time that I'm trying to become a military pilot, it was sort of it was a little bit of a fool's errand, because my wife was never fully on board. I heard the answer I wanted, and I moved forward. And then several times I said I was done, and then moped around and wanted to do it again. She would acquiesce, and then the furthest it got was I interviewed a C-130 squadron in Fort Worth, and they ultimately said no, but with the sense I got was if I interviewed a second time, I might get a yes. And we were living in Delaware, and I interviewed at that squadron in January of last year, and when I came home, June told me she was pregnant. And so then it was like, maybe I shouldn't. If I get hired, I'm going to spend either my son's first year or second year going, basically.
Yeah.
And I mean, you're kind of home in the evenings, but they're like 12-hour days. And the ultimate goal may not be clear. The ultimate goal would have been fly for the Air National Guard in addition to being an airline pilot. Because after your seasoning and everything, you go to a traditional reservist, you do 7 days, you fly 7 days a month. But now,
so you would end up working for the airlines anyway.
Right. And that was something that came away with every time I visited these squadrons. All these guys are somewhere where I wanted to be, but all they're talking about is getting into the airlines. I'm like, I was already a cadet. I had a job offer. Yeah. I was basically waiting for training. I was like, it's so weird. So it was basically a series of the past 5 years have been major. It felt like regression, but it definitely ultimately resulted in growth for me. It was like a fast track class in communication, and recognizing how selfish I was being, and then learning how to do what's best for my family. So now I'm just coming out of that, being content, which just it's preposterous when I look at it detached, but learning to be content with this incredible job that I have, because it's not the exact one I thought I wanted. So I feel like God protected me from destroying my family, basically. Maybe I'm equipped to spend time away, and I grew up seeing my dad be deployed, and I feel like I can handle that, but my wife didn't sign up for that. First of all, she didn't marry a pilot, and she didn't marry a military pilot, definitely. And even though her dad was a military pilot, he had a reserve job at a training squadron where he was basically home every night, and he was flying for the airlines, and yet Julie remembers him being gone a lot. And he was gone less than I would have been if I had done what I was trying to do.
So was that a conversation piece of saying, I don't want what I had, for Julie, I don't want what I had with my dad being gone so often.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting.
And and it was weird for me, so like reflecting on it, because I mean, growing up and going to college, I never really had major aspirations. I was like, oh, I'm interested in design. I'm going to do some design job. And I got kind of bored of that. And then once I started flying, I just kind of became obsessed with becoming an Air Force pilot and really got caught up in it. And it wasn't until I spent, my son's second week of life away that I really recognized, oh my gosh, can't imagine if I had another job on top of this. What was I thinking?
You'd never be home.
Yeah.
Wow.
Some people do it. Maybe they have strong families. I don't know. But I know that wouldn't have been good for us.
Yeah.
And so I'm really grateful for where I am to bring that long story to a conclusion. I feel like I'm finally, like, even just as recently as the beginning of this year, essentially.
This morning.
Yeah. An hour ago. I'm like arriving at what I feel like is a healthy mentality about my job and my future job, which is this one that I'll be doing for a long time, and what it means for my family and how I should go about prioritizing.
Would
things.
you say that you learned to prioritize your family in like a tangible way? Is that
absolutely? Yeah.
Okay.
And even as I was experiencing these extremely self-centered, very American values of pursuing some major ambition, wanting to be something special, whatever, I was recognizing, like, why am I doing this? This is so not who I wanted to be, but
you looked at yourself from the outside.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what I want.
Yeah. But I couldn't shake it. It's kind of like
The desire.
right. Like, oh well, if we just waited to get pregnant, or if I'd started this process earlier, or whatever. I just wanted to be at the end result. I wanted to be this certain guy, and it's been an arduous journey letting go of that, and being able to look back specifically at 2024. I've seen, like, from the start of airline training in late April, I could probably count on my hands the number of times I was at church because I was away, like, definitely every Sunday, and away from home for months at a time, and just realizing, like, wow, I should have been really, like, out of the word, out of, dialogue.
What would you say? So you looked at yourself and you thought, I don't really want to be that. Even though I want that ambition, I want that status maybe, I don't want that lifestyle, really.
Yes.
So what is it that when you think about, if you were to picture yourself from the outside, what do you want? What is the thing that you think is actually good that you're pursuing now differently than your career?
It just comes back to, I want to be a great husband and a great father. And as soon as my sight, kind of strayed from that, that's when it became like I saw myself starting down a path that could cause serious issues. And trying to think back, growing up, what I imagined myself as a man being, and all I ever wanted to be was a husband and a father. That's why I didn't really have career ambitions, because, when I was 17, my priorities were in the right place.
Yeah.
But I had my adolescent spurt 10 years later. Yeah. And I sort of wrapped up my identity in, as Americans tend to do, in what I was going to B, tied to my work, 100%, and trying to make up for all these past occurrences where I'd quit something. Oh, I'm not going to quit this. Like, I feel completely out of that now. And I'm like, I don't know how, other than bringing it to God and saying, hey, I'm in India, can you help me? Yeah, I just, looking back on the extremely recent version of myself, I'm like, how did I get that far?
Like, how did your priorities get so,
Exactly.
like, trajectory?
Yeah.
Heading was off.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to feel like I'm just not in that anymore. And yeah, kind of had like a little reality check, a little reset.
What are some things you did that you feel like every dad should do?
Yeah. So once we started planning to have a kid, at least, we don't know for you. I've become really, and even a little bit before, I've become really excited about the milestones that are coming in the future. And so I haven't really done this yet, but one of the things I'm excited to do is gift giving at various milestones. And that's something I feel like
with your children?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something I feel like is a strength of mine, or at least a way that it's my outgoing love language is giving gifts that I like. I just love giving gifts to people that I think are really unique and
Fit.
yeah.
Okay.
Receiving gifts doesn't really do the same for me. I'm just like, oh yeah, cool. But I don't know. So whatever that, and in that same kind of vein is something I want to do, and I think fathers should be doing, is monumentizing or celebrating the milestones, and giving significance to them, because I brought this book from John Tyson.
Yes,
Father.
Intentional Father. That's a good one.
And a lot of his influence comes from The Power of Moments.
Okay.
And I guess Man's Search for Meaning. A couple books I can name drop, but I haven't read.
Okay.
Anyway, so he talks a lot about how rites of passage have been lost, particularly in the West, but just kind of modern
culture.
Yeah. Men today don't understand why they're a man, and they feel uncertain if they're a man. If you take a large survey and you say, when did you become a man, or how do you know you're a man, it's going to be kind of random answers. So I don't know. I mean,
When I went to
when I
college,
could start drinking or vote or
driver's
college,
license.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So historically, rites of passage have been a boy on the cusp of manhood goes through this journey where he grows and discovers himself becoming a man. And a lot of examples were like really deadly, and it's good we don't do those things anymore. Like, all right, go kill a bear by yourself.
Go survive in the forest for a month.
Yeah. But some concerted effort of, okay, now that you're 12 going on 13, you've spent the first part of your life basically attached to your mom. Now you're going to kind of separate from her, and I'm going to teach you how to become a man. And it's going to be through a series of milestones that are meant to grow you. And when this is all done, you'll look back and say, I know I'm a man because to quote John Tyson again, he says, like, I've gone through the shifts, I've completed the ordeal, I know I'm a man because I've earned it. Not in some weird like earning salvation situation. This is more, it's important for or I feel as a Brady father, I feel it's important for us to recognize these insecurities and the need for boys to be guided and shown specifically how they are to become a man, and how this is the difference between a boy and a man. And so anyway, I don't think I answered your question at all.
No, you did. So one of the things would be that you want to implement milestones
Yes.
into your son's life so that he doesn't wonder when he gets to 20,
Yes.
30, 40, am I a man? I guess I am. I guess I became a man randomly by just chance. Do you feel like growing up, did you get that experience of milestones, or do you feel like that was missing from your upbringing?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
I think I already described my dad as being an incredible example.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, an area maybe of weakness was, or at least an area that I wish there was more of, was kind of signifying those milestones. So I say a little of both because they sort of happened organically. Because I think I was about 13 and my dad went on a deployment, and I sort of stepped into a quasi man of the house, helping out with little brothers and sort of trying to, talk to my mom and comfort her and whatever I could, just help. And I didn't know I was doing that. But looking back, I felt like there was a bit of a shift there. And then once you're 15, I think you can fly as an adult.
Okay.
It's a weird number.
Yes.
But some things I remember wishing I had more distinct milestones for was like my first shave. First time I shaved, I was staying with my childhood buddy. My dad was deployed, and my peach fuzz was just out of control. And so he got like a new razor out of the package. It was actually one of his mom's razors. It was like there's a women's like a leg razor, and that was the first time I shaved at his house.
Yeah.
But that was something I wish I had with my dad. I wish I could look back and had that first shave with him. So that's kind of the one that stands out the most to me.
Yeah.
I actually did have my first drink with my parents in Germany when I was 18 because I was of age.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah.
So what milestones do you want to do for your son?
Okay.
Do you have some in mind already that you're thinking?
Yeah.
And do you have age? I know he recommends some ages in that book, but
Right.
What have you thought about in regards to that?
Definitely the shaving is there. And I think the thing is, I think my dad's done it, with my younger brothers.
Has he? Okay.
But, you get 3 more tries.
That's right.
I'm not jealous. So
Maybe next time you go visit him, you should just say, Dad, let's shave together.
That's funny. I actually did take him out for a straight razor shave.
Oh, that's cool.
And he taught me how to drive and everything. So that was another milestone. So I think about the shaving and learning to drive. Like I want to do those things. And as a flight instructor, I want to teach my son how to fly. I think that would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah.
You can start learning pretty much whenever. You can't get your student pilot certificate until you're 16, and you can't get your private until you're 17. So if in the future I have access to or can afford to have an airplane, in addition to teaching him how to drive, I'd love to teach my son how to fly. I mean, that just seems like a given, since I have the capacity.
Right. I know dads can do that with his kids.
Yeah, you got to.
Yeah.
So shaving, driving, flying, vehicles. There's got to be camping, right? So maybe learning some basic survival skills. I'm no survivalist, but just
Start a fire.
stuff with fire and
build a tent or whatever.
yeah.
So milestones. I think that's
Yep.
a really great one. What other items have you thought about that you think have been positively impacting for your family, or you think every dad should do?
Basic, values I'd like to instill.
Right.
Yeah, I think something else when it comes to instilling values, things I think about are like, how am I going to handle extracurriculars or like sports, and I'm going to teach them about work, especially in light of my recent experiences and, you know, dating and finding a future wife. So, you know, what Julie and I have talked about, okay, well, we want him to, you know, maybe he's gonna play piano because Julie plays piano, so she can teach him piano because, you know, maybe kids hate piano lessons, but it's a super versatile, great thing we think is probably important.
Yeah.
I'd love him to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I love it and I think it's awesome.
Do you do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, I did it. I did it for a few years, and then I've been away. Didn't manage to do it while I was in Delaware, and now I'm back at the same gym I was at before, and I just love it.
It's cool.
It feels great. But after I leave, I'm like, man, I'm so glad it just feels like it's fun.
Yeah,
it's good.
That's good.
You know, getting crushed and choked out. It's great.
You want your son to eventually join you in that.
But there's sort of a balance where we're like, okay, are we cool with wrestling, but we don't want him to like be a boxer, you know, because training in fight sports versus like competing in fight sports, like, we don't want you to, you know, get a bunch of TBIs. So we're kind of anti putting him in football.
Or the MMA ring.
Right. But, you know, you could spar, you can learn how to defend yourself, but you don't need to go fight somebody to the death or to the KO for fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't get a brain injury over
Right.
enjoyment.
Yeah. So reflecting on Julie's childhood and my childhood and how much we were compelled to, or I don't know what word I'm trying to use, but trying to find the balance between your parents not letting you quit something and allowing you to choose what you want to do.
Yeah, it's a hard choice.
Because
it's hard to see.
Yeah. Because I feel a lot of like turmoil when I think about, I've done a lot of different things growing up, and it's easy to wish I'd stuck with one and gotten really good at it. But I also value all the experiences I had. And so I was a gymnast when I was young, but like starting at, you know, age 5 or 6, and then I think I quit when I was 11 or 12. And I was kind of like, I don't think so. Like, I don't want that. I don't know why. That was just, and I mean, it was like 4.5 hours a day in the gym, 6 days a week. At the point that I quit, that was the commitment.
Wow.
For a preteen.
Right. It's a lot.
So I wanted to see my friends and I wanted to play soccer again. Soccer. And that's why I quit. And that's fine. That's good that I quit, but I still have those imaginings of like, well, I could have gone to OU or like the Air Force Academy on a gymnastics scholarship, and that would have been great. Whatever. I don't know. So what?
Right. But I guess you're wondering, like, for your own children, is it better that you got the opportunity to choose to not do that thing?
Right.
Or should your parents have just been like, no, you're going to keep doing this until you make it to the club?
Yeah. And I feel like on the gymnastics front, I'm glad they didn't keep me in it, because I think I would have been pretty lonely. But then I did soccer, and then what frustrated me is in 7th grade, my middle school made me choose between soccer and band. I couldn't do both. How are you make a 12-year-old decide between sports and music? I just think that's not right. So if there's anything I can do to prevent that kind of fork in the road,
you feel like sports and music are both important.
Yeah, and I think that's an unnecessary fork. So anyway, I chose band, did that 6th, 7th, 8th grade, and then quit band.
So I know you're early on in your fatherhood journey, but when you think about all those things, what do you intend to teach your children, future?
I don't know. I guess one aspect would be being versatile and active, multi-talented is valuable, provides you more options. Actually have to decide if you want to pursue any of those things later. And there's, age-old, countless examples of the values you can derive from team sports. Definitely more so than individual sports. Individual sports is more like mental toughness, discipline. But team sports, you get a lot of social skills, camaraderie.
Yeah, this is how you accomplish something here.
Yeah, and exactly, like the team is more important than individual. Those are core values, and that was something that drew me to being in a flying squadron. It's like, this is a group of like-minded in terms of the mission, skill level, and I want to operate as a highly effective, at least.
So what is it? So you got a 4.5-month-old right now.
Yeah.
Right now, what are you doing with your 4.5-month-old? Because I know that a lot of babies just sit there.
Yep.
So what are you doing?
Just talk to them, smile at them all that.
What is it?
I'm just like, hey Cooper, hey buddy, what's up? That's like our whole conversation. I love seeing him.
Do you hold
him? Smile. Hold him.
Yeah. Does he play yet?
Yeah, he's starting to like grab him, put him in his mouth.
Yeah.
Like last night I was cooking and Julie was holding him in a chair and he just kept like looking over at me and smiling. And so I went over and picked him up and held him and he just like, that's the best. And like when he wakes up from a nap, he's like, he sees your face. Yeah. And we got all our family photos up on a wall, QA now, and we'll point out everybody, the faces. He's like, yeah. That's mainly what the day consists of.
Yeah. What is it do you think that makes that so special? Like, what is it about a small child?
I guess, it's like you imprint on them, right? When it's just a part of you. And to them, like to Cooper, Julie, and myself, I recognize there's really never where someone's going to look at you like that. And there's maybe not words for what you're experiencing. Lock eyes with them, there's nothing else. And then
no one else looks at it.
And in the back of it, there's kind of the weight of, I've got to raise him. And it's my responsibility to protect him. And, we just moved his room. So I started realizing pretty immediately after he was born or leading up to being born, I was like, I don't like the location of this room. It's too close to the front door. We got it rearranged yesterday. I just feel so much peace. Maybe that's a misplaced area of.
But in your mind, it was
too
close to the front door. I wouldn't be able to get there in time.
Yeah, because it's
whatever happened.
Right. Because I don't love a brand new house. I don't love the floor plan. You open the front door, and his previous room was right there. So now it's in a different place.
Yeah. But that was one of your ways to say, this is something I can do at the very least. Protective hat on, or apply what I'm saying. I want to put in. This is one way. Well,
great.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me talk about myself for long periods of time. I don't do that for.
That's good.
Fellow fathers and friends, so glad you could join us for this episode. To stay connected, visit our website at fatherandfriend.com. Sign up for our monthly newsletter or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media sites. Be sure to like, follow, and share with fellow dads and families in your community. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, send us a message and let us know. Until our next episode, keep showing up, loving deeply, and making an impact for the good of your family. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Father and Friend.